Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to another video. So for today's card, I am using one of the brand new Waffle flower stamp sets that is the cutest thing ever. I had a hard time deciding what to create with first for this release because there's just, everything's adorable. But this great big stamp from the new Group Hug stamp set, I am not even kidding. The second I opened the package, I was like, this is everything. It is so cute. So I pulled out the B watercolor paper that I used in a previous video that I got my hands on more recently. So I thought I'd give this paper another shot. I liked it in the previous video and I was like, I think it's a good paper. It's different. It's 100% cotton and yet the price is decent. It doesn't look like it has a lot of texture, but large, like very large stamps like this, like this stamp is, well, you saw at the finished card, it's almost the size of an A2 card, so it's huge. So any image where you have a lot of detail, regardless of the type of paper you're stamping on, usually it takes, a few tries. But that's the one thing I'm finding is this watercolor paper doesn't look very textured, but it does have some texture to it, which is technically a good thing because it pulls at the watercolor and all that stuff. So I stamped the image with VersaFine ONYX black ink and then heat embossed it with clear embossing powder because that's just my mood lately with everything. Rather than white heat emboss everything in watercolor, I've been stamping it in black and clear embossing it and then watercoloring. And with this image especially, usually images like this, I prefer them stamped in black because then you can see the detail of like their eyes and everything. Because when you stamp it in white, you lose that detail. So, or you need to, do something to show it because otherwise it just kind of fades in, if that makes sense. So for the actual watercoloring, I am using just my Prima watercolors and keeping it very simple. I am not doing anything fancy, any fancy blending or layering or anything like that. Because 1, this is a large image. 2, as always, I was running out of time. And 3, I feel like I'm still getting back into it after being, so sick last month and not creating near as much as I normally do. So I kind of got myself a little worked up before I started making this and I was like, to do it justice. But this image is so cute that you don't need to do, and with any image really, you don't feel intimidated or overwhelmed. Like there are some phenomenal artists in the card making industry that just, their coloring is something else. They do beautiful, beautiful things. Sandy Elnock does beautiful cards and Kelly Latavola and Nicole Spohr and just, I could go on and on, start listing all these names of people that just, they create beautiful backgrounds. They create beautiful art with the layers and the scenes and all these things. Like they make images just pop off the page and that's great. That is fabulous. I think it's amazing. I love watching their videos. I love seeing their cards, but I even myself, sometimes I find it intimidating because it's like, I'll never be able to do that. Even though all of them teach how to do it, you can take Sandy Elnock classes, all that stuff. But I have to remind myself sometimes that I am not them. I am not Sandy Elnock. I would love to have her skills, but that's not who I am. I enjoy coloring and I try not to overthink it too much and just let the image do its thing. So you don't need to don't let it intimidate you. We all have to start somewhere and practice makes perfect. Practice, practice, practice. I still remember when I first started, watercoloring my cards, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know how it worked. I was frustrated and nothing would work for me because it wasn't turning out and all that stuff. But the more I played with it, the more comfortable I got with it. And now I don't even think twice about reaching for watercolors. I may not be fabulous in that sense of doing, these gorgeous pop off the page images, but I'm happy with it and I enjoy the process. That's the most important thing, is I enjoy doing it. And I'm not sitting and comparing myself to another person who, their skill level is in another realm. And they focus on, either watercoloring or Copic markers or anything like that. So that's just my random little pep talk. That's the things that go through my head when I'm making cards. So I did that main image and after everything was dry, I had added some white highlights with my Jelly Roll pen. And then I wanted to create a background. So I used the remaining piece of that same watercolor paper. That's another reason why I like this B watercolor paper, because the size is kind of perfect. So the remaining piece I just taped down to a hardboard here, just using my washi tape. And then I applied clean water first, so the watercolor paper was already wet before bringing any of the color. And then I'm using these Pastel Dreams Prima watercolors for this one. And I love these colors. And I actually love how this turned out. Normally I would be very, like, purposely trying to get the entire rainbow on here, you know, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. But I started with purple, added the deeper kind of pink color, and then that orangey color, a little bit of yellow, and then that pastel. That pastel green is life. The color is just, I love it. I love all the colors in the set. So I painted those on, and it just, that background just made me happy. It just, the colors, it's like, oh yes. And I really like how that watercolor paper took these watercolors. So I want to do more backgrounds with that because I was really enjoying that. So after it was completely dry, I trimmed it down to slightly smaller than the A2 card. And the large image, the group hug image, there is a coordinating die set as well. So I die cut that, and I like how it cuts out the little center portion around that giraffe's neck. So I die cut that, and then there are sentiments in the group hug set. So I stamped 2 of them onto some black cardstock, and then the hugs word onto some pink cardstock with some clear embossing ink. And then I'm going to heat emboss these with detail white embossing powder. And once I've got these coated with that white embossing powder, I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. And then I'm going to die cut them with the coordinating dies that are in the set. There's a die that cuts out around the hugs, and there's 2 little rectangle dies that trim these out, which I like that. It's one less thing for me to do. I don't have to like sit and, you know, straighten things out with a trimmer. I can just die cut it. So after everything's die cut, I'm going to adhere this image to my watercolor background with some craft tacky glue. And I purposely offset it just to show a little bit more of that background because I was really happy with it and I wanted more of that color to show. So I offset that, and I was originally going to just trim it to the watercolor background, but I'm actually going to trim it to the card base. So I'll deal with that in a minute. So once I got that adhered, I adhered the heat embossed and die cut sentiments as well to the card front, and really having to tell myself like they don't need to be perfectly straight. I literally have to tell myself that. It's just, I have little bits of OCD that I deal with, and things like, you know, my sentiments need to be straight, the layers need to be perfectly straight, like things just need to be a certain way, and I struggle with that. So even putting sentiments on an angle is difficult for me sometimes. So I did that, and then my card base is heavyweight white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 11, squared at 5 1/2, so that's an A2 size card. And I'm going to adhere my card front to the card base with more of the craft tacky glue. And once I have that centered and adhered, I can then flip the card front over and just trim off the excess of the group hug image so that it's flush to the edges of the card. So I just use the edges of the actual card base as my guide just to trim that off so everything is lined up and just looks a little more seamless. So once I did that, I pulled out, and this wasn't intentional and yet kind of was. Waffle released 3 packs of enamel dots, and I love them. I love them, but especially this pack. This is the up and running, although well, especially this pack because it went perfectly with this card, but I do have a thing for rainbow. But yeah, the colors like working so perfectly, that wasn't what I set out to do. I just picked the pastel watercolors because they're pretty. And then it was like, oh, the enamel dots like literally match. Like it was all meant to be. So anyway, I adhered several of those enamel dots to my card front, and I still had the stamp in my travel platform. I didn't clean off the stamp very well from when I used the VersaFine ONYX black ink because this fog ink picks up a little bit of the black, but I'm going with it because I'm not going to take this card apart or try and fix it. So I stamped that onto the inside of the card and took a couple tries to get, you know, everything stamped because again, large stamp. And there's also a little heart outline stamp in that set. So I inked that up with just some worn lipstick Distress Oxide ink and just kind of stamped it on the inside because I just thought that'd be a cute little touch. So there's little pink hearts. So that is it for my card for today. Like I said, this is part of a new release. There's a blog hop and giveaways and all that fun stuff. So I will have a link to my blog post in the description box below the video, as well as a supply list and links to all the supplies used. So you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.